Hi there, and welcome back to another edition of ScaleUp Radio, the podcast designed to make navigating our scale-up journeys that little bit easier by learning from others' experiences. And this week on the show, we're joined by Ilona Hitel, the founder of Commsco, to discuss the power of PR, particularly in the B2B tech industry, high-tech industry. And with the UK tech funding landscape facing real challenges recently, Ilona shares her insights on how to navigate these choppy waters. And she also emphasizes the importance of PR for startups and scale-ups, explaining how it can help them to articulate their story, establish real credibility, and also reach their target audience more effectively. And Ilona also sheds light on the key traits to look for when hiring team members and the responsibility of founders to communicate effectively and to manage investments really wisely. And Ilona illustrates that with a couple of examples. So join us as we explore these critical topics and we discover Ilona's real passion for propelling challenger brands to success. Welcome to another episode of ScaleUp Radio. I'm delighted to be joined by Ilona Hitel today, who is the MD and founder of Commsco. So Ilona, welcome to ScaleUp Radio.
Thanks very much, Kevin. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, fantastic to have you. So tell us about Commsco. What is it that you do?
Well, interestingly, I think we've got a bit in common here, Kevin, because we actually focus on, we're a media relations company, but we also kind of do marketing for firms that are growing. But we very much focus on the scale-up end of the market. So we look at technology businesses that have got a story to tell. And, you know, they're going up against the giants and they need a bit of help and they maybe think they can't afford marketing or PR or digital support. And actually, you know, that's what we're there for. So my background's in PR. I don't want to say how many years I've been in technology PR, but I helped build a global agency, Lewis PR, which was purely tech at the time, to about 200 people. And then I kind of stepped off of that particular journey because actually it became about managing people more than it did about getting involved with clients. Right. And also the clients became bigger and bigger. So in the end, we were kind of working on the likes of BT. Whereas at the beginning, I actually launched, you know, I was involved in the launch of Salesforce, and people who know the technology and you know, understand that, then they know how big that was, and Sophos, and other really, really different brands that challenge the marketplace. So Commsco is known as the agency of challenger brands. So it's these companies that come along with a real new proposition. So if I look back to Salesforce, when we launched them back in the day, it was the end of software. So that was such a good, I mean, that is your absolute flagship pioneer PR campaign. You know, they stuck their kind of, their whole kind of ethos behind that because it was an amazing story, because at the time people were buying software and it was sat on the shelf and they were wasting millions on kind of redundant software, and along came Salesforce with this amazing proposition. And so it was so fascinating at the time. And as I say, sort of as we went along, we kind of worked on bigger enterprises and big brands. And when you work with a big brand, for example, like BT, you can't really affect change. It's a lot of administration, and there's nothing new. There's not really anything new. You're in the management of kind of the brand as it is, and then a lot of it becomes crisis management. And I realized what I really loved was working at that kind of dynamic challenger end, the sort of journey at the beginning and how exciting it was. So the agency that I lead, and I've got a great, very capable team of 11. We're based in London, and we support those technology brands that are emerging. So over that we've been going for 10 years. We had our 10-year anniversary in May.
Great.
And over the time that we've been going, we've seen all the trends, because you're at the very sharp end of what's going on. And it's absolutely fantastic. So hence the kind of link up with yourself, Kevin, because we really believe that, you know, not so much the underdogs, that's not a very positive term, but we support those companies that are kind of have got the opportunity, but not necessarily the gravitas or the awareness or the funding to go as far as they should really be going. So we tell founder stories at the outset. Yeah,
brilliant. So brands that are looking, you call them challenger brands, they're looking to disrupt the market in some way. There's something about them, but they don't necessarily have the financial might of some of the people that they're competing with.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's this myth, and it probably is true to a certain extent, that PR is very expensive and agencies, the retainers are really high and the only bigger brands can afford them. But there is such a thing as kind of cost-effective agencies that are built to be really very productive and responsive and agile and entry-level costs. And that's where we fit in. And I think our team is extremely passionate about each of the company's stories to such a degree that the companies feel this level of support. I know it's a cliche, but, extension of the marketing team, that's what we effectively try to be.
Yeah.
So, for example, I saw in your sort of background, you've come from the care and home care and health sector.
I certainly have spent my time in that sort of sector and healthcare, pharmaceutical industry, things like that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got a number of this year actually since the pandemic, we've had a number of brands coming on board that are in that sector, that sort of tech for good. And we're actually in the process at the moment of just managing a very big story that's about to break with a broadcast channel all around an autism app. So there's lots of really interesting developments that are going on in health tech, and it's great being a part of all that.
Yeah, it is a fascinating sector. Very good. So I get a feel for it already, but what makes you different from other PR agencies?
So at a sort of basic sort of tactical level, we don't sort of bill by hours. So we haven't got that kind of cynical level of, oh, well, you've had your time for the month, but, these sort of things these tactics didn't work. We build by results. So, we work with clients on a longer term basis, and and as I say, we kind of, if they don't hear from us every day, then I'm surprised, because we kind of work very hand in hand. We've got shared Slack channels, we're on email groups. We're sort of embedded within their organizations, and a lot of agencies, if they're large, they maybe win a piece of business and then it's sort of, it's one sort of small fish in a very large pond. But we will all work, we're all hands on. I dip in and out of most of our sort of client campaigns, because I guess, and this is also cliche, we love what we do. It really isn't all about the commercials. We have a great team, and it's a mix of kind of media and PR people and marketing people. And we get involved with a lot of the scale-up scene, actually. So we've helped the ScaleUp Institute with various events and we've offered some support around that. And we've just announced a partnership that we've got with an organisation called the ScaleUp Group, which helps scale-ups to get funding, which obviously at this time is particularly acute, the need for that, because it's been a very difficult year when it comes to funding. UK has been a bit sluggish, to say the least. So we're supporting them with, their kind of PR, but also the PR of their client base, which is the clients that they're finding funding for. So we're kind of helping them to make them successful. So next year as well, we'll be supporting their annual industry events called the Enterprise Awards. So a bit of a plug for them there. So if anyone, they've got an enterprise worth entering. So those awards are unique in the UK in that they support founders and entrepreneurs and small businesses. So they take place in June, but the entries will be opening in January. So that's really an exciting thing that we'll be working on next year.
Very good. Yeah, it sounds excellent. And you mentioned the difficulties accessing funding. We were speaking a little bit earlier before we went on air. So what is the environment like for you at the moment? Over the last year or so.
Last year, well, I have to say, I won't be so sad to see 2023 come to an end. I think there's been inflation has had a major impact. A lot of the investors are looking for the return rather than taking the long-term view because rates are so high in terms of borrowing. The level of funding, and it's kind of, I've got rough figures in my mind, is about half of what it was last year. And now last year was a good year for tech funding, very good, but it's definitely down quite considerably this year. But there are obviously niche areas that are still really, really getting a good level of investment, and those are quantum. AI this year has obviously, as everybody knows, has taken off incredibly. And the advent of it is really, because we've been talking about AI in our sector or within what we do for probably 5 to 10 years, but it's not really been kind of majorly adopted.
Yep.
Whereas since the advent of Chat GPT last year, I think it took the industry as well by surprise. It was just the phenomenal rate of what AI is able to do. And then every business has been forced into, particularly as well as the economic environment, this kind of imperative for how can we be more productive? How can we incorporate AI in our day-to-day business? So it's just really taken the UK market by storm. And so there is obviously good levels of investment there. And I was just about to go on to say that, I remember launching the first internet browser, believe it or not, in 1995 or something like that. And I couldn't, and I compare that now, I couldn't imagine what the internet was going to bring. Because if you go back to then, we kind of heard about the internet, but it was an academic thing. It was launched out of a university in the US. And I just thought it'd be this intricate technical network. And look how it's changed our lives. And I've heard it said that the AI is the same, but it's going to do more. If our lives have been completely changed by the internet, think about more than that, and that's AI.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. The pace of change is just accelerating all of the time, isn't it? And you mentioned people talking about AI, artificial intelligence, for some time. I studied electronic engineering in 1985, and it was part of the curriculum there at a very basic level, but it was being talked about as artificial intelligence then. Obviously, no concept of what that really meant from compared with today, but it feels like it's been bubbling and bubbling and bubbling, and then all of a sudden it's just broken through, doesn't it? That's sort of how it feels. Yes, quite amazing.
Yes, it's incredible. So there is investment in areas like that, and also, it was good to see. You're up near Birmingham, aren't you? I think in terms of location, it was good to see. The Birmingham Tech Week. There was some investment that went into that area, so it's not all London based. There's quite a lot of regional hub activity going on. We've got a couple of clients in Bristol, so it's spreading out. I think there are about 28,000 scaleups in the UK. I don't know, but by no means the majority of those are in London. If you look at the sort of map of scaleups, they're kind of spread across quite a lot of cities now. Yeah. Although I know that, I was talking to a client the other day, and they were saying that, one of the other issues in the UK is the lack of investment that's gone into sort of the public transport network and infrastructure. People who maybe have to commute from Leeds to Birmingham, it's really, the transport system's really letting them down. And I think that's another area that we need to focus on as a nation. It
is, and there's always the excuse, isn't there, that with the internet as it is now, and with facilities like Zoom and everything like that, that actually that's less important. We need, but we still need a degree of decent infrastructure, don't we, from a travel point of view. But
100%. I think that's another interesting topic, isn't it, in terms of what's happened in the last 4 years. Who would have thought that we didn't need to necessarily meet up face to face, but I think from our point of view that's coming back. Clients seem to want to be in a room together. Right. Not necessarily, you don't necessarily get the appetite for it from sort of the Gen Zs, the younger generation, because they never even studied in environments where they were with people. So they've done so much from home that coming to work in the offices is kind of sometimes a bit of an ask from them. Whereas I look back to pre-COVID, we were in the office every day and we were our most sort of creative and interactive. We've settled down now into a sort of 2-day-a-week routine, and it works. It really works, because those are the days where we really do sort of have our best client ideas and have our, if we've got issues going on, we'll discuss them face to face. I think it makes a huge difference, to be honest.
Yeah. So how have you kept the culture side of things going with your business? What sort of things do you do? You've got 2 days a week. Then when you're in, how do you really get everybody working well together and feeling part of the team?
Yeah, so we have Tuesday is our catch-up day. So we catch up on everything from client activity to, new business, to marketing, to, each of the clients individually. So Tuesdays is our big sort of get-together. And then Thursday we have team lunch. So Thursday is a kind of, we don't have as many meetings, but we have our creativity sort of brainstorms for our clients. We have what we call the client clinic, which is looking at all of our different campaigns and where we need extra focus. We bring everyone around the table, but we also have kind of, pizza or whatever it is that we have on a Thursday. So that really works well. And then Friday, all the rest of the days, we're kind of on Slack channels and, as you say, Zoom. And so I think that works quite well. And also the other reason we haven't really done any more than that is because the train strikes this year. Mm-hmm. This year has been pretty lousy when it comes to public transport. So it's just downtime and lack of productivity when if you're trying to make people to travel when there are train strikes. So it just makes sense to have people working from home. Yeah. So tomorrow we've got our Christmas bash. We're going to Battersea Power Station, doing some mad golf. I think it's called Birdies, and then we're all going out for the big dinner, slap up dinner there. So we do a lot of things to get the team together. And we've got, we're very close unit, and I think that's one of the things I've learned as well. The more you can, get FaceTime with your team, it definitely breaks down a lot of barriers, and I think the phrase is clear as the custard from time to time. I don't know if you heard that, but we use that. And there's initiatives we put in place as well to try and, it's been a tough time. Like, last year when the utility bills went up, we paid the increase to all of our team. So to make life easier, but it's undeniably hard for everyone, particularly working in London, because the rent rates are just phenomenal. It's not even I can't buy a house at the moment. It's like, well, it's difficult to rent. So a lot of people I know starting out in our business, they're back at home again, living with parents.
Yeah, no, very, very difficult, and anybody moving from outside of London into London is suffering with those. They might get a pay rise, but all of a sudden they realise that actually the cost of living is probably easily eat away that pay rise potentially. So, difficult time. So let's have a look at PR for a minute, because I think it's one of those things that not everybody gets what PR can really do for a company, particularly a company trying to disrupt the market, maybe. So maybe just take us through why PR is such a great tool and what it can really do for an emerging business that's really trying to achieve something, but hasn't quite yet made it to the level where they're a household name, if you like. Sure.
Well, yeah. If you start out, so a founder kind of devises a business and founds a business with a aim in mind. There's a shortage in a marketplace. There's an issue that their customers are feeling. Yep. There's a service or product that people need. Otherwise, they wouldn't set up, right? So I know that sounds like fairly basic common sense, but it's amazing how many founders or companies don't necessarily know how to articulate that story. Mm-hmm. So, and particularly if you look at tech as well, if it's very deeply technical, the market might struggle to grasp what exactly, and that's because there will be technical audiences, of course, who will, but then there'll be other, investors, or there'll be other people in the ecosystem, partners that don't understand that level of technicality, and they kind of need it retelling for them. So step one, I think, of any kind of PR mission is to really tell the company story, to say why do you exist? And ideally to make it as interesting as possible. So, you often look at the competitive sort of marketplace and what other people are doing and saying, and see how you are different. And it might be, you're quicker, you're more cost effective, or you've got a product that does, X, Y, and Z more, or your customers love you, or there's lots of different ways that you can differentiate. But the main thing is you have to differentiate, and PR should do that for you.
Okay.
So I always say, I think every business is PRable, as long as the business has a sort of a kind of successful mission, and it's set up by someone who isn't just trying to make fast money. They really have a passion for what they do. And this is another reason I work with founders and startups, because the level of passion you get from founders is quite phenomenal.
Yeah.
And we work, if you work with a large organization, you never get anywhere near the CEO or the founder. If you work with a scale up, you work with the board and the founder and the leadership, the founders and the leadership. And when you get their story, oh my goodness, it's, it transforms you, and it becomes less about what you do for a living. And this is where I come into my own, and more about kind of getting your head into somebody's, it's almost like you become a storyteller, and you get your head into what they do and why they did it and how amazing it is. And they need that to get out to the marketplace. And often they don't know how to go about that. And if you get someone who really gets under the hood, so to speak, and can articulate that, you then go to all manner of outlets. So now it used to be about the media. It used to be about, just journalists, and you go to publications or online pubs. Now, because of all the social channels and, influencer groups and events, that story can be amplified across all of those outlets. And if you've got a good organization worth its salt, like, for example, our team, obviously, they take that one idea, they craft a campaign to kind of elevate the issue that the business is set up to solve. And then they might come up with a story around, might share some data to the media that is an interesting story that, gets profile and gets interest in the company. They might come up with a case study. So, a customer using that product, but an interesting customer using that product in an interesting way. And they might come up with sort of what we call thought leadership, which is articles that are placed in the relevant media.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of different things that you can do to elevate your organization and its mission. And if I take Commsco, for example, we were classic in that we were always so busy for clients, working for clients, that our marketing actually really sucked. Yeah. And in the last year, I guess, because we've had to work harder, because the market's been a bit more sluggish, we've looked at SEO, not paid SEO, but organic, and we've managed to create all sorts of content, which has got us to sort of the front page of searches. And that's what you need to do as a business. You need to be found. You need to be findable. You need to be findable. If a customer is searching for their issue, so for us, it would be tech PR, we need a tech PR agency. They put that now, or B2B tech PR, they put that now in Google, and they're likely to find us. And apply that to any business, any sector, healthcare, I need to find something that will help me with, I've got autism and autism diagnosis. Is there anything available? That's where we need to be if we're supporting that particular company that I referenced earlier. So you're looking at where the search terms are, and you're matching your content and activity to those search terms. So it is kind of scientific as well, but it's not really rocket science. It just takes hard work, research, and a bit of creativity. You've got to have those good ideas. Also, I think in the last year, no, probably the last few years, the media has become really under pressure because the outlets are shrinking. There's less funding for them, and you have to make it easier for them, but also you have to stand out. It's so competitive now to try and get a decent story out there.
So it's differentiation, standing out. You mentioned thought leadership is also really about credibility, isn't it? Because I quite like the view of the the product life cycle adoption curve, where you start off with your innovators and your early adopters, and you go through to the early majority and whatever. You've got that bell-shaped curve. I like the version of that that's got a break in it between the early adopters and the early majority, and they call that the credibility chasm. Because that's, as a startup, particularly a tech type startup, we're going to get some innovators who want to try the latest thing, and they're going to do that. We're going to get some early adopters probably from that circle that will do it from our usual activities. But if we want to break into the bigger segments, those really the early majority, we've got to somehow bridge that credibility gap that says, you know what? Yes, we're not just disruptive and just high tech, but actually we're really credible here as well against who the incumbents might be in that marketplace. And that's where PR, for me, that's a real area where PR is absolutely the way to do that, to achieve that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if a prospect comes looking for you or they have a need and they look across, all these providers, and they find a story about you solving that need with a company that they recognize, that's the beauty of PR. So we call it a Me Too sale. But if we go and dig out stories from our customers and their customers, and we can tell it in an interesting way, and we can get it placed in the right outlet, then their prospects will say, wow, I need some of that. So that's kind of how it works. Absolutely. You're right.
Brilliant. Good. So you've worked with a lot of brands over a lot of tech, B2B tech startups and tech scaling companies. What do you see as the things that maybe have separated the ones that have made it from the ones that perhaps fell by the wayside?
Interesting. I think ones that have fallen by the wayside. So if you look at maybe there was, I won't name names, but there was a sort of a couple of high profile cases this year where it can come down to something as simple as a founder miscommunicating to its audience. So it can be overhyped numbers. It can be over optimism. It can be customer communications. It can actually come down to PR. So if you look as well at today, actually, we're not in consumer, but if you see what Zara has done, but also Next, in one day, two sort of big faux pas in terms of their advertising campaign, both based on the news agenda. Next has basically produced a pullover that had Pan Am on the front. I think it was just to recognise the anniversary of Lockerbie.
Right.
That's been pulled immediately. But also Zara had some sort of advertising imagery that sort of resembled kind of what you could only imagine the Gaza Strip. And there's huge outbreak now on social media with people calling on consumers to boycott them. So those things can have a huge impact. And I think, so comms has been much more key to whether you succeed or not because of social media, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is, I think if, organizations, if they do get funding, and this is probably less this year and more previous to this. So I'm thinking about the .com crash, and that was the biggest waste of money I've ever experienced. But all these companies having huge levels of investment with no sort of responsibility for it. It wasn't their money. And I remember back then an organisation coming to us for PR, and they said, we'd like to spend £25,000 a month on PR. And I said, and I mean, there are campaigns that run at that level, but this was a relatively new kind of brand in the marketplace. And I said, I don't know how to spend that amount of money. They said, well, we want to spend that amount of money. So we kind of refused to pitch for them. I mean, the market was ridiculous. But when the .com crash happened, there were stories of all these offices that had been emptied. I don't know if you remember. And journalists were going in and rifling through all the paperwork, as they would have done, finding all these proposals for huge amounts of money. And it actually, some of the suppliers were really, bad-mouthed as a result as well. So, right. So I think it's, you have to treat investment responsibly. You have to invest in the product. You have to, and customer service. Customer service is everything, I think, because if your customers don't love you, then you will walk into problems. And I think some organizations that set up to make a quick exit and their primary motive is to make money, that's when I think you probably get into hot water. So,
yeah, good. So, what are some of the things that you've got right, would you say, with Commsco?
I can tell you about some of the things we've got wrong.
Well, we could start. I was going to come to that next, but we could start there if you prefer.
Yeah, well, actually, they don't necessarily spring to mind. I think it's really difficult to set up a company on your own. I think in hindsight, for example, I would have definitely done it with a partner.
Right.
I think it just helps because you have one person focused on one area and the other on another, but it accelerates the journey. I've now, lucky enough, I've got a really great number 2, number 3 deputy and a number 3, but it's definitely been slower as a result. If I compare myself to other agencies that set up at the same time. So I think just surrounding yourself with people that you trust and that have got your back. I think the one thing I would say to any founder or entrepreneur is when you're hiring people, it's great if they're bright. I mean, we hire people who really are kind of sharp and on the ball. But the most important thing is that you've got their hearts as well as their minds. Because if you just have we had a very bright employee at one point, very bright, but never really felt like they were kind of part of the team. And I think if you can get the enthusiasm and the passion, that's you can teach everything else, but you can't teach someone to have that.
So how do you? That's excellent. I'm glad you brought that up. How do you look for that when you're recruiting? How if I was to, what advice would you give to people that are recruiting? Easy.
Never hire someone that you have even an element of doubt about. Those are the mistakes I've made. Like when you've been because obviously we're in a very, very different market at the moment where it's an employer's market, not an employee, because there's, the funding's not there and revenues are down. So I've got 3 people I'd love to hire, but I can't at the moment, But when you normally come out of this, it becomes the other issue. So this is the founder problem. Either revenue is, an issue, or people, recruitment. So, and if you can get those like that, but you can never get those like that. I mean, that's the dream world, right? Yeah. But I'd say when you actually come to recruit, so in the kind of heady boom times, I've sort of sometimes taken a risk, and it just a slight risk. There've been like 95% there, never worked out. So I'd say, look for people who have definitely worked. So even if that's worked throughout university, people who have not worked, who have sort of, kind of made it through life without working on their journey. We hire a lot of graduates, so we look for people who've worked throughout their studies, because it just gives them an element of experience and it shows you the type of person they are. So that's one of the things I'd say. And just someone who really wants to. I think you can tell now, maybe it's just me being sort of all my years of experience, but they respond, they're very responsive, they're kind of very enthusiastic, they take the time to look into you. those sorts of people are the people that we want, because they're going to be like that with clients. So yeah.
And might link back to that. I was intrigued with your positioning of the business, and how is that positioning focusing on B2B and the tech and the challenger brands? How has that helped or maybe hindered your business?
I think it actually sorts a lot of the wheat from the chaff, actually, again. I think it's quite good, because I remember when I was working in the previous agency and there were sort of big brands and people would come to us, because I want to work with Sony, or I want to work, do you work with Apple? Actually, I think that shows a certain degree of commercial naivety, which you'd expect if someone's coming straight from university or something. But the fact is, if you work with an Apple, everybody wants to work with those kind of brands, and you end up maybe doing some admin and you're permanently being reviewed because everyone wants to work with that particular brand. If you work with the sorts of businesses that we support, it's so much harder to get the story out there that it's an intellectual challenge. So it's about telling a story. So almost you're becoming more of a journalist. And lots of people want to go into media. But obviously, as I say, for all manner of reasons, media is a tough industry and it doesn't pay very well. So we try and support journalists as well as much as possible, given outsourced work and things like that. But I think if someone wants to come and they see it as a sort of it's not all about the big brands, I think they're more likely to have a bit more. I have to be careful here, but yeah, they relish challenges, and I think B2B space anyway is much more interesting. It's much more consumer PR market is very different to us. Yeah, so that's not we very very focused on B2B. But I think the interesting part is definitely the scale up challenge and telling the story.
Yeah. Okay. And what's worked for you from you mentioned that you put a bit more effort on the social media side of things for your own marketing, but what works for you? How do you find the right kind of clients?
The network always. So clients recommend clients. And I think no matter what you do, however much marketing you do, I think that kind of endorses you once they look at you. But the clients that really come in and the relationship starts well and carries on, long term, those are the ones that come recommended by our clients. Unfortunately, we're very lucky. Our clients recommend us. But otherwise, yeah, I think we've done some good outreach emails. We've done some events. In fact, that's a good plug for we've got an event coming up January the 30th. It's on Eventbrite. It's called. It's an AI founders event, and it's about making your company stand out. So I think it's AI, standing out AI when you're an AI founder. And we've got a brilliant lineup of speakers. We've got someone who's going to talk about the marketplace and developing sort of compelling AI propositions when the market is so busy. We've got a guy talking about how to find investment and funding. Mm-hmm. And growth strategies, and we've got the final person on the panel is a Forbes and Guardian AI journalist, and he'll talk about actually how to stand out because he's saturated with stories. You can imagine. Yeah. So he'll talk about actually there's still a story, but these are the angles that you need to be looking at now. So it should be a really really useful event. So that's January 30th, late afternoon.
Very good, excellent. So I think it's come out a little bit already, but what is it that you love most about what you do?
Yeah, so just I love working with founders to develop and develop their propositions and seeing them get the recognition they deserve. So we've got some great health tech and AI brands and among others, just coming out with a story and working with the team and then seeing it from sort of 0 to 90, and then every time you look out, you go looking for that client. They're everywhere, and you think, wow, that it's just what we do, and the clients also, they recognize that and they see value in that, and it's just a really nice relationship. That's kind of what fuels me, that sort of level of success, and getting people profile when they're probably, sometimes they're tiny. Some of these companies can be really small, and we might manage to get them on BBC, and it's incredible. I love it.
Brilliant. So what frustrates you the most then? What's the flip side of that? What drives you mad?
I think being hired by a company and then kind of being told what to do, because that's not how, that's like a lawyer, you hire a lawyer and then you don't listen to them.
Yeah.
It's got to be two-way. Or, we develop all of these materials and it's great, and we, we really want to go and we're ready, and then there's no sort of, it's not a two-way thing. It has to be two-way, really, because unless things are approved, we can't do anything. Our hands are tied. But that doesn't happen often, because most of the people that we start to work with, they really appreciate what it is that we've got mutual objectives. And sometimes, it's very difficult sometimes, because we have to be the go-between between media and clients, and clients sort of want to maybe pre-approve copy, and that's a total no-no in media world. And so sometimes it's those things, but generally speaking, it's just there aren't many things that really get to me on a day-to-day. It's just the macro events. COVID was great, actually.
I've not heard that. I've not heard that sentence.
No, that's a terrible thing to say. But the digital, it was mad, because for 2 weeks, kind of, there were clients that sort of stalled, and everybody was in a mad panic. But then, my goodness, the amount of digital transformation business that came out, because everyone had to, adapt, and they all needed to promote their solutions, because everything had to change. So that was a really interesting time. But since then, with the war and with I know we're not calling it a recession, but effectively it is. It's been a lot tougher. So it's those things that are more difficult to manage. But on the other hand, I've always find those times a real kind of, that's the point you can actually differentiate. Yeah. Because if I think one of my clients says that in a boom, even turkeys can fly. Whereas in a recession, if you can be innovative and win despite, then you're doing well.
Love it. Very good.
I'd like to go back. COVID was not great.
No, we all know what you. We all know what.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So if you and I are sat here in 5 years' time, what would you count as success?
I would say actually becoming known for some famous scale-up brands, say startup brands, having a team that can effectively, run the business and enjoying what they do. Goodness, I shouldn't really say, but I'd love to be sort of 20, 25 man agency. Yeah. But it's not all about size and scale. Yeah, winning a few awards for some of these things. We've done. We were shortlisted last year for a really nice stunt that we did for an anti-money laundering client. We positioned some washing machines outside the Bank of England in the city, and it was I think it was there was a specific date that we chose to do it, and then we filled them full of kind of fake cash. Yeah. And that got the client actually a lead, because obviously it was right in the middle of the banking space. So that, things like that, become famous for some of those things and make our clients famous. And to see, to be able to really reward our team, and to see a better environment. Also, we're doing some support for charities, so to be able to spend more time doing that myself personally, and hopefully to see an end to all this terrible war that's going on at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So,
here to that. Definitely. Yeah. All right, good. Well, Ilona, it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. Thank you very much. Are you okay for a quick fire round, a few quick fire questions before we close off?
I didn't know they were coming, but yeah, go.
So if you could go back to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
Have confidence, because I think, well, certainly personally, I didn't necessarily trust myself, because I think that's also why I support kind of the challenges now, because I'm a daughter of a Hungarian refugee, so I always kind of lacked a bit of confidence, but that gave me a massive work ethic. Yeah. So, but isn't it amazing that you can be so much more confident with age than if I knew now what I knew then, Yes, amazing.
Absolutely. Okay, good. Any books, podcasts, other resources that you'd recommend people to seek out?
Well, obviously our podcast, CC Tech podcast. In fact, we interview quite a lot of CEOs, so that's quite a good one.
Yeah. That again? Do you want to just say that again?
It's the CC Tech podcast, so it's Commsco Tech podcast. We run it, so it'll be on our social media channels. Yep. Always interesting to find out what our founders and CEOs think and what makes them get out of bed in the morning. And book-wise, I really, really still, I'm not a massive one for business books, actually. I read quite a lot on history. Hungarian Revolution is my thing.
Okay.
So, my father being Hungarian, but he lived through it. So I read a lot of kind of fiction and learn from those revolutionaries.
Yeah, very good. Okay, excellent. Any apps or bits of technology that made a big difference to you?
Well, funnily enough, we use a few things at work, and we use great things. There's a few more AI tools that we're using. SEMrush is a good one, which monitors where you are, what search terms are sort of going up or going down. But I have to say, this year, it's all come back round to LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn's fantastic. Yeah. I think it really has. I don't know how you found it, Kevin, but I find it serves so many purposes.
Yeah.
In sales and marketing, I think it's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, excellent, very good. Who's had the most influence on you as a business leader?
It's a really good one. I've got like a couple of kind of role model female. The thing I always regret actually is that when I was entering into technology, it was all men. Men. It's been very difficult to find female role models. One, I think, that stood out for me was a client of mine and then became a sort of friend, was Jacqueline de Rocca. She's now a CBE, and she was also on Design Disc. She used to run Tech UK. She's amazing because she's operated in a male-dominated environment, and she's very charming, and has done huge amounts for women in tech. So I'd say probably her.
Brilliant. Good stuff. Well, thank you very much indeed again for being my guest, Ilona.
Thank you. I'm enjoying doing this with you almost in the March Christmas with your Christmas jumper. It's been, although this is radio, sorry, so that's not going to have an effect. But.
Yeah. My one Christmas jumper, unlike one of my colleagues who has a Christmas jumper for every day of December, every working day of December.
Wow. He's
not quite that far. And no. if people would like to get hold of you, Ilona, or find out more about Commsco, what's the best way for them to do that?
So pretty much podcast or via the website, really, www.thecommsco.com. So, and we're all on I'm on LinkedIn, everyone, but I think you'll find the bios and especially my name spelling on the website. So that's thecommsco.com. So it's been brilliant talking to you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you very much. So Ilona Hitel, thank you very much for being my guest on ScaleUp Radio today.
Thanks, Kevin.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.